All right, section 3.3, the conditional. And we talked about what this was before, but I don't remember if I actually gave you the name of what it is. So conditionals are compound statements using the if-then connective. It's the only one that we haven't really discussed. We talked about the and connective, we've talked about the or connective, we talked about negations, and now we have the if-then connective. So the first thing I want to talk about is the symbols that are used to combine these. So when you have an if-then, if you have a statement P, so if P, in fact, let me write that down. If P, then Q is the language. Then the symbols that are used to describe that are an arrow between them. So the if part comes before the arrow, the then part comes after the arrow. And sometimes this is read P implies Q. Okay, if P then Q or P implies Q. An antecedent or premise is the P. It's what comes first. It says if this stuff happens. Okay? And the consequent or the conclusion is the Q. And I don't tend to use that language, but if you see them asked or if you see them stated in your book or on my math lab, you need to know what they're talking about. So if you see the word antecedent, you need to know, oh, that's just the first part of an if-then statement. And if you see the word conclusion or consequent, you know that's just the then part. Okay? So that's something that you might see come up. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about the language that's involved with this, because it doesn't have exactly the same forms as the ands and the or statements. One of the things you did when we did and or statements is you did some things to combine them where you found out that it didn't matter what order you did an and statement in. Do you remember that? Okay, you did something where it asked about forming a conjecture. That's what your book said. And you guys were like, what's a conjecture? Do you remember? Yeah, and I said, well, they're just trying to make a statement that tells you what's going on in general. But those particular ones you were looking at, what you were finding out is that it doesn't matter which way you do the or statement, it doesn't matter which way you do the and statement, but it matters when you do an if-then statement, okay? So, for example, or the example we're going to do is we're going to rewrite the statements using the if-then connective, rearranging or adding words as necessary. So these are different ways that sometimes people will say in English an if-then statement. And this is one of those things that you have to be careful of because you don't want to say it in a way that people don't understand what you're talking about, or sometimes maybe you do. Okay? Anybody want to be a lawyer? No. Okay? This is the kind of language stuff you have to be careful about, right? Is you need to make sure that people are understanding what you're saying. So we're going to take a look at one. This one says, it must be alive if it is breathing. What is the if connected to? Is it connected to the alive part or the breathing part? The breathing part. All of this piece right here goes together. But it sort of looks like it's not occurring at the beginning, right? Nothing's showing up for you guys right now. All right, I'm going to keep writing. We'll talk it through so that maybe you can see what I'm writing, even if you can't see what I'm writing. Oh, look. There's the bar. Look, it's not coming all the way around. All right. So if it is breathing is the first part. So if we were writing this in an if and then a then form, I would rewrite this to move the if it is breathing to the beginning of my sentence. And that's what I'm going to do next. So I'm rearranging, I'm rewriting to say if it is breathing first. So if it is breathing is going to come first. What's going to come next? Then what? Then it must be alive. So we can rewrite this as if it is breathing, then it must be alive. Now, part B, or number 2 here, has a different issue. The issue it has here is that I don't see a word if at all. Do you? No. But it's implied in what's written. So what we're going to do is we're going to rewrite it so that we explicitly see the if. So what do you think I could do to rewrite this so that it has the same meaning as an if-then statement? You got it. So I'm going to introduce the if because it's talking about some characteristic about a shopaholic, right? So if she, if he, if they, whatever word you want to use, I'm going to use they since that's what you used. If they are a shopaholic, then they have no self-control.
That's a learning experience.
Let's see. All right, so even if you have a statement that doesn't have an if and a then in it, and it's talking, I mean, there's often a way that you can put them in that would work. And you're going to do some problems like this on your homework as well. So let's take a look at taking these statements then and working with the symbols, okay? So the one that we're going to do next is going to be like what we did when we first did and or statements. We're going to take statements that are either written out, which will be number 4, and turn them into symbols, or statements like number 3 where they're in symbols and we're going to write them out, okay? So we've got 3 letters identified for us and described. We've got S, which is she has a ferret for a pet. We've got P, which is he trains dogs. And then we have M, which is they raise alpacas. Sounds like an exciting household, doesn't it? Do you want to live there? I don't know. It sounds like it might smell. So we've got a statement then here on number 3 where we have a P, and then we have an arrow, and then we have a tilde M. So, what am I going to start the statement with? If. Why am I going to start with statement with if? Because, well, it is because that's what we're doing, but that's not what I meant. Because it's got an arrow. That arrow tells you that what you're going to write down is going to start with the word if. So we're going to start with if, and then what's going to come after the if?
If he trains dogs.
Right, so the P talks about training dogs, so that's the letter that we're going to be identifying here. So if he trains dogs, what comes next? Then. So the word then, so the if at the beginning and then in the middle come because of the arrow, right? And then we need the statement that's the tilde M, and M was the statement they raise alpacas, so...
They don't raise alpacas.
They don't. They don't or do not raise alpacas. Sounds like a negotiation between a husband and a wife. If I train the dogs, you don't get to raise the alpacas. I don't know, something like that maybe. Okay, so we're going to do it the other way around now. Same idea, but we're going to start with a statement and we're going to turn it into symbols. All right? And there's more going on in this one. We do see the words if and the word then. All right? So that's important. That tells us we're going to have an arrow. But you also see another statement besides the if and the then here. What else do you see? There's an or down here that we're going to have to deal with at some point too. All right, so let's start with the if. What's going to be the first letter that I write down? A tilde P, because it talks about him not training dogs, right? So this is tilde P. And then there's going to be an arrow because that's the part that's going to come after the if. It's the then part. Then what happens?
You might want to put parentheses on this one.
Yes, I think you do. Because it says, if this happens, then one of these other things is going to be happening next. So parentheses are necessary for this. But what 2 statements then are going to be joined? An S for the ferret, right?
The B.
V for or.
And then the M.
And then the M for the raising alpacas. And we close our parentheses.
Chime in anytime. I'm not going to answer all the questions.
Okay, everybody okay?
Yep.
All right. So we have another truth table to work with here. and this is probably the one that causes people the most trouble. The ands and the or truth tables, people are pretty okay with, but the if-then one is a little bit different. Okay? So we're going to create a if-then truth table for P arrow Q. P implies Q. 2 statements. So how many rows am I going to have in my table? 4. Good. So I need a column for P, a column for Q, and a column for P arrow Q. And you guys are getting really good at telling me what column P is. So what's column P going to be? Right? True, true, false, false, just like in the last section. And column Q? All right, everybody good with that? All right, so here's what we're going to do next. We're going to identify, just like I did when I did this before with teaching math and being a mom. I think that's what I used, wasn't it? We're going to do the same thing idea here. Whoops, sorry. Except we're not going to do math and mom. We're going to do P is, she is a mom. We'll just say is a mom. They, he, she, whatever. Is a mom. And we're going to do the Q is a woman. Okay? So, the first T here applies to the statement is a mom. So, is she a mom? And if the answer is true, then is she a woman? True. Then this whole statement would be a true statement. So just like the other tables, if you ever have TT, it's true. Okay? After that, things are going to be a little different. Now, let's say we have the statement, she is a mom, and the Q then says she is not a woman. Is that possible?